Today on Dead Dodge Garage, it's the 5-minute fix, or how to make your classic car or truck kinda run okay. Yes, the 5-minute fix takes 20 minutes. That's part of it. Get out of here, guy. What are you doing? The subject of today's video is this beautiful 1969 D300 with custom dualies and other stuff. More on that later. I love everything about this. It's awesome. Even kind of drives nice. Sorry, folks, it's not that kind of show. Before we begin, some notes. I've reviewed the footage and, well, the thing about working and making videos at the same time is sometimes you get distracted and you leave important notes out. For example, I would have liked to explain basic terms like advancing the timing and retarding the timing and their relation to the crank. I may well just have to make another video for true beginners. Just keep in mind, this is geared towards someone that owns a classic car, or 8, and sort of kind of understands how things work, but doesn't necessarily understand the tuning aspect of things, which I've found describes many owners. I think that's why I've been vaguely successful tuning classic cars. The best way I've found to understand these concepts is, well, just dive in and do it, and make mistakes. Set the timing totally wrong. Screw things up. You'll learn. At least it worked for me, and it only took 10 years. And another thing, none of this information is helpful if you have a horrible misfire. A dead cylinder screws up a vacuum signal, which screws up your idles, which screws up everything. Make sure you've got 8 good spark plugs and wires and a good distributor cap. Your basic parts need to be good, and your firing order needs to be set correctly. Feel free to see the other video for notes on that. This is your standard cruising model LA318. It's just like every other LA318. They're all the same. This standard run-of-the-mill 318 has points ignition and a Carter BBD, which is great. It does kind of need this, but that's a different video entirely. I took this truck for a test drive a little bit ago after replacing this exhaust manifold because, well, they're not supposed to be 2-piece. And as soon as I turned it out of the driveway and hit the throttle to go up the hill, it went a classic sign of retarded timing. This seemed like as good an opportunity as any to talk about the 5-minute fix. You fiddle the timing, fiddle the idle mixtures and the idle speed, and get your hot rod running kinda okay. I like to start with timing. Step 1, loosen your hold down bolt just enough that you can turn the distributor, but not enough that it'll just flop around. I usually leave them this way. You can reef it down later if you prefer. Disclaimer, I'm going to give you some advice. It might be right, it might not. That's up to you. If you blow up your engine, it's not my fault. Now, you have many options for setting your timing correctly. Of course, there's a factory spec, and, well, yeah, you should probably just use a timing light and set it to that, but that's not how I like to do it. That wasn't supposed to happen. Let's just ignore that for now.
True friend.
Dude, you can't hang out here.
It means no harm.
Well,
but it just...
I feel like we've lost the plot here, and we've hardly started. So the thing about timing marks is, by the time your truck's 50 years old, or 60 years old, or 70 years old, it's probably not right anymore anyway, because balancers have a tendency to start disintegrating. And that's assuming it was right to begin with. I set timing by ear. Couple key things. First off, you want to start happy and not struggle. Sound like it's kicking back against the starter, because that breaks stuff. And you really don't want it to ping. Pinging is a horrible high-pitched rattling sound that you hear when you stomp the throttle. You definitely don't want that. If you ever hear that, just back your timing off a little bit until you don't hear it anymore. What we want to achieve is the highest, smoothest idle we can get by adjusting the distributor. You can verify this with the vacuum gauge. Also note, this basically applies to stock-ish engines. If you have some radical thing, the stock timing curve in your distributor isn't going to work, and you throw all this information out the window. So let's keep that in mind. Let's fire it up and find the smoothest, happiest idle. Well, it can't be too far off, because it does start okay. As nice as this thing runs, it can't be super far, but let's see if we can improve it. This is a clockwise distributor. By the way, this information applies to small blocks and big blocks and inline sixes and all sorts of things. Let's search around a bit and see if we can find where it's happiest. First, we'll retard the timing a bit and listen. Oh, that got worse. You hear it drop down. Aha! Hear the difference? Where it was is here. Super retarded is here. And happy is here. Let's get out a timing light and see what that says. Now, we're far from done here. But I just want to say, that's how it starts now. Just totally random stab and twist, and it's already pretty darn close. You can tell immediately it sounds way happier, much smoother, and a slightly higher idle. Now you should know, a lot of this is based on experience. In fact, all of it is. It's certainly not based on science. But let's see if we can bring a little to the table. This is a dial-back timing light, and it is my friend. Even though it's the cheapest one money can buy, and probably not even that accurate. The magic of the dial-back timing light is you can twist the knob or adjust a button until your timing mark lines up at 0, and whatever number you've set it to is how much base advance you've got. You can also rev the engine up and hold it, and repeat the same process to find out your total advance. Extremely helpful device if you're trying to tune an old engine like this. Determining the exact timing needs of your particular engine is way beyond the scope of this video, but the sorts of engines I'm usually playing with, a good base timing setting is around 10 to 15 degrees, and a good total timing setting is somewhere between 32 and 38. You probably don't want to go over 40 degrees, that's how you melt stuff. Again, those are just ballpark numbers, and the whole point of this is search around and figure out what works for your engine. Now, you certainly can't see this because science, but the mark's lining up at 0, and this says I set it to 24 degrees. That's too much, just saying, but the engine sure sounds happy. As nice as this thing starts and runs set there, I'm inclined to think A, the timing mark is wrong, or B, I could recurve this distributor and this thing would be a lot peppier. However, it is a big, heavy, 1-ton truck that tows a camper. Awesome, right? So we definitely want to make sure it's safe. And while it starts pretty nice, I do hear slight early ignition when it fires up. Let's back it off to like 15 and see how happy it is there. I can't tell you how much 15 is. Just start twisting it. You'll get there eventually. That might be too much. That random twist brought us to 12. Probably somewhere around where I'm gonna leave it. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. I have the benefit of owning like 3 of these magic little devices. If you don't, well, just forget that and set it by ear. Pinging is not your friend. Pinging is the final way to know if you have too much timing. The first time you put a heavy load on your engine, when you stab the gas pedal, if you hear a sort of noise coming from the engine, stop and retard the timing a bit till it goes away. Using one of these techniques, a gun or your ear, you should be able to get the base timing set very close to where it should be. If you happen to own a dial-back timing light, you can now rev the engine up and twist that thing to line up 0 again at, say, I don't know, 3,000 RPM. And that will tell you how many degrees are in your distributor. Make sure you unplug your vacuum advance first, or it's going to be totally wrong. But how does knowing how many degrees are in my distributor help, Jamie? We'll talk about that later. Oh, or you could just ask Uncle Tony. We started with timing because that's, well, usually where I start. But the thing is, the timing, the idle speed, and the idle mixture all sort of play together. So as soon as you adjust that, you need to check these. Idle mixture screws. They might be your friend, don't know. Typically, they are going to be anywhere from a turn and a half to 3 turns out from fully bottomed. If yours end up outside of that range, well, there's probably something wrong. On idle screws, we deal in half turns. This one was 2.5 turns out. I'm going to start with 2 turns and adjust from there. 2. This is a 2-barrel, so there are 2 of them. Make sure they match. If you have a 4-barrel, you still probably only have 2. You might have 4-corner idling on your fancy performance Holly, but that's a different subject entirely. We're talking about, street-driven junk here. When you're running these screws in to then baseline your adjustment, do not reef them with your screwdriver. They should just barely touch. If you tighten them down too hard, you'll break the tips off in the body. Ask me how I know. This one was at 1.5 turns, while the other one was at 2.5. So putting them both at 2, that seems like a good move. More notes. See? Airhead. Can't focus. Life is hard. Anyway, most idle screws, all of the ones I've ever dealt with, all the way in is no idle fuel, and as you take the screw out, it adds idle fuel. There are screws out there that do the opposite. I can't tell you what carburetors use those. I've never seen them, but know they exist. Similar to when we adjusted the timing, what we're looking for is the highest, smoothest idle we can get by adjusting these screws. I'm going to start it with them at 2 turns and listen. I will let them out a 1/2 turn each and see if that improves things. If it doesn't, I'll go back in and then I will take them in a 1/2 turn. Basically, you want to find the spot where the engine just starts to slow down or stumble, back them back out to the nicest idle, and then I go an extra 1/2 turn out, for flavor. You can go a 1/4 turn if you like. Sounds pretty happy, but let's see what the screws tell us. Let's go out a 1/2. Which is hard to do through the camera, by the way. Oh, come on. Yeah? Well, I put the camera down, spun them into a 1.5 turns, and the idle came up. So let's go to 1. Interesting. Putting that one down to 1 didn't really change anything. Might have improved it a little. Putting that one down to 1, it started to stumble quite obviously. So I'm thinking one of those air bleeds is partially blocked or goofed up, and that's why they were set differently to begin with. But it seems much happier now. This is also somewhere your other senses can be useful. I could smell quite clearly this thing was running rich. Idle speed. Depending on how goofed up your tune was when you started, you may have raised your idle quite a bit. So, just kind of come over here and play with the screw until it sounds right. Personally, I normally end up with idles way too low. Especially on a stick car, that's probably fine, That's closed throttle right there. The correct position is, and you can't see this with the carburetor on, the throttle just open enough to uncover the end of the transfer slot. Straight up and down slot in the throttle bore. It's something like, I don't know, a 1.5 turns in on this screw. That's gonna be pretty close. It's fine. Oh, also, after you adjust your idle mixture screws, giving it a rev can help things settle. Yeah, see, now that's too much. That is a nice running 318. Still with me? I hope so. So, we adjusted the timing by ear. It was slightly too much. We backed it off so the light said it was safe. Now I'd say we take it for a drive and listen for pinging. Oh, by the way, if you gotta spend some time in the engine compartment of a truck, swept line's a good one. Hood opens almost vertical, and it's got built-in, benches. It's amazing. I declare this D300 good enough for testing. I'm thinking just that timing tweak might have brought us up to the 210 horsepower the oil bath air cleaner advertises. We'll see. Let's see what it do. I don't know about you, but I like really low idle speeds and really firm return springs. This truck's missing the latter. It's a bit of a bumpy ride, but it could be worse. I actually used to daily drive a 61 Dodge D300. It was bad, but it was cool. And it did dually burnouts. There's constructioning happening. Oh, worlds better. It can actually pull a hill. Nice. And it's got low end grunt and no pinging. So I think we're pretty close. I don't think it's getting full throttle. It certainly doesn't fly, but hey, revs out pretty nice. And it's smooth, safe. I love this truck. Cruising at 55. Can't even hear the exhaust because the windows are open, and if they weren't, it would probably be whistly and horrible, but that's fine. Smooth, pretty comfortable for a 1-ton. I'm jealous. The turning radius kind of sucks though. I won't tell if you don't. Whoopsie! Awesome! I imagine the owner might appreciate the extra 40 or so horsepower. Now the unfortunate news is I need to rebuild the carburetor, which means I'll be redoing a bunch of what I just did. Also, I need to change the points and condenser, reset those. And every time you do that, it changes your timing slightly. So I'll have to redo that too. But at least we got a good baseline. Sweet running engine. You need a pickup for filling the bed full of crap and dragging trailers around? Look no further than the 1969 Dodge D300. Go for the dually. It's fine. Everything's fine. A working gas gauge? I don't believe it. Now, if you do this process and you get it really, really wrong, well, there will be signs. So, use all your senses. Tread carefully. Make small adjustments. Don't ram the idle mixture screws down into the carburetor. And, just practice that a little bit. And you'll get there, I imagine. And that's all I have to say about that. What's a little copyright infringement among friends? Thanks for watching. And remember, at the end of the day is going to end.
Dude, that's funny.
Thank you. In case you were wondering, this is what you want. Ta-da! Nice. Epilogue. Is that the right word? Sure. Anyway, open the distributor on this thing now that it's all timed and happy. And like I said, I got to put a set of points in it. Here's what points are supposed to look like. And here's what these points in the truck look like. They're like bent and they're barely touching there. You know what's amazing about that? This thing ran great that way. Figure that one out. Well, that just ain't right. And I'll tell you something else. I didn't have to unhook the condenser. It was already unhooked. Remember, check everything. It's the cutest little Mopar box you ever seen. Like it never happened. And I bet getting full throttle will add another 20 or 30 horses too, so might be faster than a Toyota Corolla now, but we'll see.